And I'll pass it on maybe to Catherine at this point.
Hi everyone, so welcome to the official discussion. I'm here to cover a bit more about PhiLab in general as a network, since we have two people that don't necessarily know much about PhiLab, and also that PhiLab is quite complex in many ways, and so I'd like to kind of cut it down and break it down into a way that's maybe a bit more easy to understand. So originally the PhiLab project was thought up in 2014 and was mainly focused in Quebec. So it was still partnership based and it was on philanthropic research, but it was much more limited to developing research projects and research papers. Later on, they decided to apply for a second funding, which is the funding project we're doing now, which expanded the research to be across Canada. So now this is when we started developing regional hubs to really try to get perspectives from across the country. So it's not just focused on Quebec, because of course that's its own philanthropic bubble just because of the language barrier. So PhiLab's objective, there's four main objectives, I would say. Is one is to produce and disseminate knowledge. So the producing is also with the research projects that we have. So more of our long-term research projects. We call that the laboratory aspect. So that is when we have researchers associated with universities who apply for funding to establish long-term research projects over about 2 years, which will end with a research report. Throughout these research projects, they will, we strongly encourage them to hire students to help out with the more administrative research part, to produce blog articles or presentations or podcasts or some form of knowledge from the research, either on the research process itself or on the subject of the research. The second part is also becoming a reference of publishing this knowledge in a way that's accessible to not only the academic sector, but also the philanthropic sector itself. So as I'm sure you all know as students, is that academic literature can be quite heavy and very long and lengthy and not easily accessible to anyone who just wants to seek quick information. So one of the roles of PhiLab is to translate a lot of the research being done into formats that are a lot more digestible. And that is mainly my job of trying to find ways of how we can improve that, and obviously working with researchers and students and partners to make that happen. So this is where our observatory lab section comes in. That is mainly our blog and our monthly newsletters. So our monthly newsletters are theme-based. So just a couple examples we've had in the past was one on philanthropy and democracy. We've had on food security. We've had on the one we're doing right now for this upcoming month is on the invisible causes of philanthropy. The next month is going to be on climate change and philanthropy with the Atlantic Hub. So we really try to focus on a theme in philanthropy and generate content on that, mostly blog articles or what we call short-term research projects. So these are really small kind of snapshots of the sector, interviews, podcasts, infographics, really much more short, fast, quick projects that students can assist with or that can be worked on with our research members. So that's the observatory aspect. The other one is also the academy, which is where you guys come in, which is training the next generation of philanthropic researchers. As many of you know, there's not that many academic institutions in Canada focused on philanthropy. All of our researchers are spread out over so many different universities and are kind of like the person in their university covering philanthropy, but from different angles. This is at the same time a strength as it is a difficulty. It's a strength in the sense that we get many different perspectives and from many different angles. We have people in like accounting as much as we have people in sociology or in law, which is great. But the difficulty is getting these people all together to actually conduct research on philanthropy and make them know each other. So that is also a problem with our students, is that they're kind of spread out over these wide, broad like subjects, and to bring them all together is what we're trying to do, so that the next generation of researchers will hopefully be more connected and be able to establish more connections between projects as well as between different regions and sectors. So those are the three main like dimensions of PhiLab. The main axis of research, there's the theoretical aspect, so kind of defining what is philanthropy, what does philanthropy even mean, what is considered a charitable act, what is not. So more the theoretical aspect, which is overarching throughout the whole network. There's the national aspect, which is research on Canada itself, and sometimes in comparison with other international equivalents. So that's where our international hubs come into play as well. We have one in Europe, we have one in Latin America, one in Africa, and I'm slowly developing one in Australia. We have 2 researchers that we managed to catch so that we can start having more comparisons to Canada as well. And then there's the regional hubs. So as all of you guys know, you guys are attached to a regional hub that gives more landscape on what's happening in that particular area of Canada, which gives, once again, a very different experience. So what's happening out west and what's happening in the Atlantic or in Ontario or in Quebec is extremely different, and it really helps them exchange knowledge on what are the best practices, what are the different realities, and what needs to be taken into consideration when we're working in different areas of the country. And then there's, of course, also our sectoral hub, the Indigenous Research Hub, that focuses really specifically on Indigenous philanthropy, that is developing now. They're the last hub to have been developed in the project so far, working with the Circle on Indigenous philanthropy in Canada with Chris Archie, and we're hopefully gonna have a coordinator up and running by the end of this year, so that'll really help have more content being provided from them. So that's kind of an overview very generally of how PhiLab works. So we have the long-term aspects with our research projects, our short-term with our blog and monthly newsletters, and our fostering of academic research through our academy section with you guys. So I hope that covers a good overview of what PhiLab does. And I don't know if anyone has any specific questions on PhiLab Network before we move on. All good. Perfect.
Awesome. So maybe we can switch gears and just sort of dive in a bit more to what students are or have been doing since they've been wrapped into PhiLab. So to maybe get the conversation going, Kristen, I wonder if you would be okay jumping in, and I wonder if you would answer or think about sort of the questions of why or how you got involved with PhiLab in the beginning, at what stage of your student life or past student life that happened, your research interests and things that you did with PhiLab, some of the opportunities that came up, whether it's publishing or whatever, and then just anything else you'd like to add as well to that.
Sure, yeah. So I got involved with PhiLab in 2018, and that was, at that point I was doing fieldwork for my PhD dissertation, and I was kind of thinking about, at the time, how I would ensure that I got a good lens with Quebec. So in doing that, I kind of did a little bit of research, and I found out that PhiLab existed and reached out to get involved. It ended up being really good timing because a couple of months after I'd reached out, they found out that they'd won the Big Shirk grant. And so there was interest in bringing on an Ontario hub. And so that's how I became the Ontario hub coordinator. In terms of sort of where my research is at now, I still see some very strong connections with the work that PhiLab does, because my research is on sort of nonprofit political economy and the political economy of philanthropy. So right now, that is mainly looking at things like what is the role of nonprofits in our welfare state, and how do the rules that governments set up for nonprofits influence, how democratic and how fair our society is. So my dissertation looks at that in terms of social rights, and the research I'm doing now looks more at sort of like democracy promotion and nonprofit advocacy and things like that. I also have a strong interest in philanthropy and inequality, which is another thing. And also the impact of sort of climate change, connections between climate change and philanthropy, and also the anti-climate movement. I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions, so please let me know if I missed something.
No, that sounds good. Maybe just if there's been any sort of like opportunities specifically that came out of working with PhiLab, whether it's like publishing or certain things.
Sure, yeah. So I think the first set of opportunities was just being connected to more researchers that study Canadian nonprofits. It can be really hard to find them, and PhiLab, it is a hub for researchers that are connected to these kinds of questions. So that's really useful as a graduate student. There's also the being able to contribute to special editions and things like that. I always find it a good opportunity to sort of put out accessible versions of things I'm working on, or even to just think through, one of my first articles for PhiLab was on, it was a review of philanthropy and inequality, which was something I was thinking about at the time for my research. I wouldn't have been able to publish it in an academic journal because it was just sort of like a lit review, but it was a really good way to get the sort of information out there. And then the third one is I'm now writing a book chapter for a book project that is through PhiLab. So I would not have gotten that opportunity had I not been involved in the network.
Awesome, thanks. And so if anyone has any sort of specific questions for Kristen, or, we can perhaps save that until the end and we'll do a bit more of an open discussion. But I'd like to turn over maybe to Sam, if you wanted to chime in maybe about your experiences. And I don't know if you need a repeat of the questions, but you can also just ramble about whatever you would like to ramble.
Yeah, I can ramble first and then we can go back to the questions to see what I've forgotten. So I started working with PhiLab at the beginning of my master's. So that's the other thing. I'm a master's student at Grenfell, which is through Memorial University. And so part of me getting into the master's program was that I had a supervisor that was also working with PhiLab, and there was a project that she was going to be starting working on the northern peninsula of Newfoundland, and she needed a student to be working on it with her. So as part of my research, for my own thesis, this kind of fit in very well with what she was doing at the same time. So it was a really awesome timing for me, just because she had just come on with the PhiLab and needed someone, and I just happened to be the one. I personally do a lot of my own research on food sovereignty, which is a big thing for Newfoundland, where we are an island, and there are many challenges that come with that. And a lot of the concepts that PhiLab focuses on also work in ways with food sovereignty as well, and those two are very connected. So it's been a great opportunity. And what's the next question, maybe, Brady?
Any maybe just a bit more information on sort of the research that you're doing, relation to PhiLab.
Mm-hmm.
And then just sort of any opportunities that have come up, whether funding or whatever, for that you've experienced.
So the PhiLab research that we're doing right now has to do with social enterprise in rural communities, and how philanthropy and localized philanthropy can be involved in that. So that's been a really cool experience, because there's so much movement in social enterprise right now, and seeing how having a community that's trying to benefit itself and is giving to its own community to grow is a really interesting thing that I've been finding. But yeah, that's kind of been my experience.
And then any sort of opportunities that whether like funding opportunities or?
Yeah, there has been. So there was a $5,000 funding opportunity that we got in order to help build a research kind of hub on that northern peninsula of Newfoundland. And from there, we've been working on another $15,000 in order to go to the same project as well. So those have been great opportunities as well. And even just the writing of blog posts, which is another part of the PhiLab, that's been a great opportunity. And where I'm only still a master's student, this was a great thing for me to kind of get into the idea of writing and publishing. So it was much less stress, and a good way to kind of start that experience for myself.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think mostly everyone else, and maybe not you, Andrea, but most everyone else is also relatively new. But maybe I'll just give Andrea a moment to introduce herself, as she popped in there a bit after we had started. So if you could just give a quick introduction of what hub you're with, how long you've been there, and one thing you wanted to get out of this event today.
So hi everyone, my name's Andrea and I'm connected with the Ontario Hub. So I'm currently the Ontario Hub coordinator, and I've been since last October. Last October, taking over from Kristen, who's also here. So I've been involved since then. And you said What was your last part of your question? Sorry.
Just something you're looking forward to getting out of today or learning from today from this session.
I guess I was really looking forward to connecting with everyone, everyone else from across the different hubs, because that's not something we tend to always get to do, and it's nice to hear the especially with the students. So it's nice to kind of see what everyone's working on. So.
Awesome. So we'll switch gears a bit and open up the floor to any sort of questions or thoughts or ideas that you may have, anyone may have, whether they're a question for Catherine about sort of PhiLab's organization, or to one of the students who have spoken already about some of their experiences, or another student perhaps. But if there's any sort of questions or thoughts you may have that you'd like to share, now is the time to do so.
I don't know, but I could share maybe something if that's okay.
Sure.
So something, at least for me personally, is so I'm currently working on a research project with my supervisor, Francois Brouard, and collaborating with also Marc Filon, and that's also in connection with my master's. But one of the things that really, because we had applied first, but one of the things that it didn't get accepted was because we didn't have a partnership. So I just wanted to say, when we were applying for that, to make sure we had the partnership, and we actually were in conversation yesterday for looks like we're going to be involved. It's with CHIA, with the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, their foundation and their research institute. So hopefully we're looking forward to bringing that partnership forward and applying again. So yeah.
Awesome. Any other thoughts or questions or ideas?
I can maybe just about the partnership research, just why the partnership is important, just to understand why it helps us out, and then we can answer the other question that Bridget asked about you, Brady. So Andrea brings up an important point about the partnership. Is that I think the base of PhiLab was to avoid being in an academic bubble, and to keep always a connection with the sector and what's actually being done in the field. So all of our research projects are worked in conjunction with a partner from the field. It doesn't, like, there's some that are more connected than others. There's some that are very specifically on that organization themselves. So we do case studies on particular foundations. So of course, in that case, you need the foundation to be part of the research project. And there's some that kind of give their opinion or that are fostering a discussion. So for example, we just launched one on the invisible causes of philanthropy with the Saputo Foundation, because they cover the elderly and the disabled, and they find that it's actually really difficult because not many other foundations do the same. So instead of focusing on what they're working on, they're actually trying to figure out why no one else is working on it. So it's not necessarily always that the partner that you're going to be working with is the one that's going to be under the lens, but they can just be, they have this question and they want to fund research to be able to better do their work. So this was just I just wanted to give maybe a little example on why it's important to have a partner and the different opportunities available, because they can offer resources as well, either in time or in sometimes in-kind contributions. A lot of them do fund with money donations every year. So yep, just wanted to point that out.
Awesome. And yeah, I'll just share a bit about my experience as well, and then maybe we'll do what we did at the beginning, and just everyone can just sort of talk about, I know Sam and Kristen have already shared a bit, but just sort of what their research interests are, where they are in their program or work, and we'll keep the discussion going that way. But for me, I am currently a PhD student at the University of Guelph, and in rural studies. So my focus is generally on rural community development, sustainable rural communities, very general, very broad, which includes things like philanthropy when it comes to looking at community development through, as Sam was sort of talking about, communities reinvesting in themselves. So, finding ways for those communities who may be struggling or maybe with certain issues, they are able to sort of, through philanthropy versus government support or other avenues, they're, through philanthropy and social enterprise, they're able to, build that resilience within themselves. So my I guess I first started with PhiLab as a master's student, and then I became a PhD student. So it's sort of been cross-border, but I would say, it's my actual research is very different and is about climate change and Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario, which is not quite related to this, but like I said, my sort of research interests in general, being, rural community resiliency and development that way. I see myself sort of keeping a broad scope on what I do. And so it's sort of a side gig, if you would, with PhiLab. And it's been great to sort of coordinate an effort in Atlantic Canada, because one of the things we found as well is that, philanthropy in Atlantic Canada has a lot of potential, but doesn't necessarily get that same attention or, the same weight given to it than in other parts of Canada, where there may be, millions and millions of dollars in endowments. We don't necessarily see that here in Atlantic Canada. So it's a really interesting landscape. And so that's been, being from here as well, it's been interesting to learn more about that. And yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But like I said, if anyone has any questions, feel free, and maybe we'll skip over to Al to give a quick introduction to your research and what you've been doing and where you're at.
For sure. So I'm a relatively new student to the PhD program. I actually started this fall, and my background has always been in economics. So this gave me the opportunity to do some at least what I think I'm going to do is some quantitative work on how the size of the foundation affects board size and board diversity. So that's something that we're looking at doing. Like I said, it's still very early. The experiences have been very, very, very positive. I think the support that we've had from the national hub, if you will, has been great. Over here, the two hub leads that I've been working with, Dr. Kovrenkov and Dr. Gitlak, they've been very, very supportive, and it's been nice to I think somebody pointed this out earlier, just being exposed to various aspects of philanthropy. So I know next month our special edition is data and philanthropy, so that's something that'll be pretty cool. Just learning about so many intrinsic details with philanthropy and so many different research. I think the one that the two projects that we're doing in the Western Hub, the one is with academic philanthropy and just looking at the work with the Carnegie Foundation. So that's something that's been really interesting and something that I would not have been exposed to had I not been with the PhiLab. So it's been very, very positive and very promising thus far. Thanks.
Awesome. Isadora, maybe we'll hop down to you and you can give us an overview of the work you're doing.
Sure. Thanks, Brady. So yeah, first of all, I'm actually new to the sector in Canada, but otherwise, so I'm a PhD student, and I've started my PhD after about 10 years of practical experience in the sector. So I'm from Southeastern Europe, and I have been mostly working with civil society organizations there that work on community development, youth issues. So in the beginning, I was working with those, and then I moved into actually working on helping nonprofits or grantees strengthen their capacities. And this is how I got into the whole concept of capacity building and strategic planning, and is maybe one of the components, at least according to funders. So here I'm sort of building on that practical experience. My PhD is around strategic planning in nonprofits, which is how I ended up in the department for planning at the University of Waterloo. And basically I'm looking at, the key problem I'm sort of analyzing is the fact that there are big benefits from nonprofits that engage in strategic planning, but there is also still big resistance towards strategic planning in the sector. So I'm right now looking at how the strategic planning practices in nonprofits actually fit the type of environments that nonprofits operate in. I'm in my third year of my PhD, a little bit, maybe not behind, but so I'm just completing my research proposal now, and hope to be able to wrap everything up in a year and a half. And how I got involved with PhiLab is, took part in the ANSWER conference, which is the Association for Nonprofit and Social Enterprises. And this is where I met Jean-Marc Fontaine and Manuel. So yeah, it was more of a random contact. And yeah, this year when I got in touch, there was an opportunity for a student sort of helping out in some research on the effects of COVID over philanthropic institutions. So yeah, that's my story.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Megan.
Thanks. So my PhD actually also is in planning, Isadora from UW. So I was actually writing you a note in chat to find out who your advisor is, but I'll just send it to you.
Oh my God. Yeah, sorry, Mark Seasons, I think, mentioned you the other day.
Say hi to Mark for me. Lovely man, lovely man. Yeah, my research is really about the intersections of place and the sector. So I did my PhD on looking at how to evaluate, how to implement and evaluate a third sector approach to place-based poverty reduction. And I'm looking now at the question of place-based change and thinking through what the competing tensions are between the sector and philanthropists and philanthropy in general. And I have a colleague in Australia who I'm working with to do some comparative work on that question. So looking at the Australian example and the Canadian example. And I think she's also connected with you, Catherine. So that's a little bit about what I'm researching. And awesome. I'm also interested in rural stuff too, Brady. So
great. I'm working on an article right now about sense of place and place connectivity and philanthropy. So I was thinking of sending you a note after.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Are you working with Ryan, Brady?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'll send you a note afterward and we can chat. But we've heard from Andrea, we've heard from Sam. Sabina, feel free to unmute or chat is fine as well.
Cool. Hi. Okay, so like I said, I did my PhD through the University of Kent, which is in Canterbury, England, in the southeast of England. They've got a center for the study of philanthropy there, which is pretty, it's actually really great. It's, they offer, kind of like Carleton does, they offer like a master's program, a graduate diploma, and a graduate certificate in sort of like general philanthropy studies. I got there, so my background is actually in history and Indigenous studies. Both of my past degrees were one from here at Mount Royal University in Calgary and one from the University of Victoria. But following my master's degree, I kind of decided to take a break from academia and got some work, happened to get some work in the philanthropic sector working for an organization that served a collaborative of anonymous foundations and essentially made recommendations for funding for them. And although my plan had been to do a PhD, like possibly in New Zealand to sort of study like indigenization at universities, while I was working in the philanthropy sector, I kind of realized that there was space to have that conversation in the context of philanthropy. But that, you know, the study of philanthropy is fairly new across academia, like Catherine was saying. There aren't a lot of people collectively doing it, doing that study. And the same goes, or is even more apparent when you're talking about sort of the relationship between philanthropy and settler colonialism in an academic setting. I think a lot of people in the sector are talking about it right now, especially. But there hasn't been a lot written about that, I think. So, yeah, so I kind of decided to switch gears and focus instead on how the ways that over time different types of philanthropy have, like sort of what the role philanthropy has played in Canada's story of settler Indigenous relations and settler colonialism. So, pretty broad topic, and I'm sort of working out right now, like how to narrow it down. I am also sort of generally interested in like the relationship between inequality and philanthropy, racism and sexism and philanthropy, and sort of this idea of like the different ways that power filters through and shapes philanthropic practice and discourse, and what philanthropy is doing to challenge inequitable power relations, and also how it's contributing to those as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. And it's a little bit different in the UK in that there's no coursework for PhD students. So I kind of like went straight into research. So even though I'm in my second year, I'm in theory supposed to be almost halfway done writing my, or at least I should be getting into the data gathering right now, which is kind of where I'm at. So.
Sabine, have you connected at all with the Indigenous Hub? Or I don't know, Catherine, if that sort of happened at all, or?
Yeah, I think we're working on it. It's been in touch with them, and I've been in touch, I've tried to get in touch a couple times with Chris from the Circle. So, yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Thank you.
And last would be Bridget, but feel free, Bridget, if you want to. Oh, and there's the message. So Bridget is part-time at Carleton with experience managing a charity and social enterprise in the UK, tackling inequality in an area of multiple deprivation through community development, experiences in fundraising, tendering for contracts, liquidation, etc., and they haven't yet refined research interests, which generally, I guess, are around social enterprise, social impact, impact of inequality. Most experience with research was previously as a nursing clinician and educator on behavioral sciences in the UK. And Beth Breeze from the University of Kent joined the Carleton Summer School last July. Awesome. Okay. So if there's any questions, and I think I've already noticed a couple topics that ding in my mind of people who could maybe connect afterward and those sort of things. But maybe Catherine, we have some time, but in interest of time, maybe Catherine, you could just touch on what you had mentioned there in the chat about sort of the official list of opportunities for students, being themes and applications and etc.
Yeah, so thank you guys for all sharing. It really gives me a good perspective, and it kind of covered the different opportunities through the different experiences of what people have already done, which is great because then it shows that what I'm going to say actually happens. So there are definitely opportunities for students to get involved, and there's a lot of people think that it could be as intense of a collaboration as not. You kind of, as a student, there are minimal requirements of if you are going to be considered a PhiLab student of what you need to do, but you can get as involved more or less. Like, we're always very excited for people that want to do more, but we don't require you to do, this become your full-time job unless that's what you want, you know what I mean? So the different opportunities, of course, for publication is what is very important. As Kristen was mentioning, sometimes we want to write a thought piece and do an article that's not necessarily going to be on the academic level, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid, and that is actually what we're looking for. We're looking for pieces that are going to foster discussion and push the envelope a bit further so that we can then get into the research aspect and develop research projects. So that's where a lot of students come in, is that it's a good training to practice writing articles, and we have many publication opportunities. So we were talking about the blog earlier. I'm going to send out a list to all of everyone. I'm going to send you guys the themes for the next year. So Al was mentioning philanthropy and data. We have the next one this month is the invisible causes. We have philanthropy and climate change. We have on the charitable law in Canada that's going to be happening, or what's going on with that. We have really a lot of different really interesting ones. I can just tell you them quickly and then I'll send it to you. So we have obviously COVID-19 revealing social inequalities, philanthropy and food security. So I thought of you, Samantha. We have one in April that's not yet. We have also representation of community foundations in Canadian philanthropy. And also we have profiling respectful community-based research. So there's definitely those themes. And those are for the monthly editions that are sent out by our newsletter. So those are either blog pieces, interviews. We can work on infographics if you're feeling creative. We can do video interviews. We're really open to different formats, and we like exploring different ways of presenting information. So please, if you have any proposal on any of those themes, reach out to the hub coordinator that is in charge of that newsletter, and we can work on a proposal and seeing what we can do. Speaking of all of those posts, we are opening more and more funding to help students and support them in creating this data. We do understand that it's free labor if we don't pay our students, and that's not something that we necessarily want to encourage. Of course, if it's part of your research project that you're already getting funding for, that's a bit different. But if it's kind of freelance, we do have budgets. It's not millions of dollars, but it's like $100, $150 that we give as a stipend just to encourage our students and support them to write content for PhiLab. There's also not only on the PhiLab website where you can be published. We have partnerships with The Philanthropist. We just had a meeting with them recently on developing more content that can be published on their website as well. And they have a much bigger reach from their newsletter. They've been around for a lot longer. Their readership is definitely a lot more than PhiLab's. We have about 1,000 people contacts on our newsletters, and we have almost a 45 to 50% open rate of our emails. So we do have a very good reach, but The Philanthropist is one step forward. And we also have a partnership with Alliance Magazine, which their readership is 25,000 worldwide. And they are very open to republishing a lot of the stuff that we do on our blog. So there's definitely opportunities to be published on their site as well. So those are the different opportunities if you want to write or create content for PhiLab. One that was mentioned, that Kristen mentioned as well, and that many people seem to, is the networking. So as you can see, the philanthropy research sector, even internationally, everyone seems to know each other, but at the same time are not necessarily connected on working on projects. And there's always new faces coming up and building those bridges. So that's definitely a great opportunity if this is something that you want to continue in, of finding the right people to connect, to do more research, or to do comparisons like we are doing in other parts of the world, or just to connect on different sectors. There's so many opportunities of things that we can connect on just by knowing who's who. So definitely just being part of it is definitely a great opportunity. The last one is those research contracts. So like Samantha was mentioning, she is part of a research project and gets funding to work on research projects themselves. So there's definitely job opportunities either as coordinators, or as you can see, or as researchers or assistants. So those are the different opportunities available to students that are, I find, quite interesting, because we want people to actually get involved. There's not many barriers of, if you want to be involved, if you have an idea, if you have a project, we'll make it happen. You know what I mean? We'll figure it out. We'll plug you in with someone if that's what you're looking for. We want people that are interested in actually doing stuff. So that's what we're here for. We're here to fund people to create content. So never hesitate to send me an email if you have an idea. We can work on it together. And the administrative hub, as Al was mentioning, my role is not for Quebec at all. I could be anywhere in the world and I'd be doing it for everyone. So we're here to support our students, our members, and our partners in developing projects. So please never hesitate to reach out if you have any ideas. It'd be my pleasure to connect you with the right people. I don't know if anyone has any questions on those things and how it works, or.
That sounds good, and I think that the thing that I take away and that I sort of think about PhiLab most commonly is that there really is options and opportunities for so many things, and whether that's connecting with someone who I connected with, for example, Ryan Gibson that Megan had mentioned through PhiLab, who ended up actually getting me into the PhD program at the University of Guelph. So there are so many ways that this, connecting and networking this way can support that, whether it's, publishing or the next steps, or getting advice on something, or, co-authoring an article, or whatever, you'd like to do. So that's why we sort of had this event, was really to bring students and people together across the country who, clearly are working on at least somewhat similar things. If we're all in PhiLab, there's still a common thread between everything. And so to really create those networks, and I think it's something that we'll look at doing, certainly again in the future, perhaps less, maybe something in person at some point. We can look at a larger event once obviously things, if ever we're able to travel safely and do that. Otherwise, I think, these online networking events and connecting events are definitely valuable. And I think I've learned a lot, and I know that, we've learned a lot about each other, which is good, and we can make some connections that way. But I just want to sort of open the floor again to any last questions or things that people, at this point, anything anyone would like to talk about or bring up or think about before we close up here.
One question I have, Brady, and I apologize I didn't raise my hand, but so PhiLab is funded through SSHRC.
Yep.
And is there a time limit on, is it a 5-year grant from SSHRC, or is it, what's the range?
I'll give that one to you, Catherine.
It's a 6-year project. So that was officially started in 2018. So there's 3 years left. But of course, from what I understand, especially with COVID and stuff, they've also extended our time for some of the projects because they know that there were definitely going to be some delays. So they have extended for applying for grants, it can't be in another 6 years. But if there's already projects underway, I don't think they have to be completed by the end of the SSHRC grant, as long as the funding is still going to be there. But yeah, the official the official grant was for 6 years, so till 2023. And does PhiLab have any sustainability plans long term? Yep. So the way we're working on right now, so the point of establishing the hubs, the first step from an administrative point of view, was just to get the hubs going, get researchers and students and partners involved that are in that region, because yes, we get the SSHRC funding, but we also get funding from our partners. Definitely not at all at the same level from the SSHRC was a couple $1 million, and our partners they're definitely still up there of I think it was 200,000 or maybe even more, but definitely a big portion is still from our philanthropic funders. So hopefully the objective was that these projects can continue after, maybe on a smaller scale, because the SSHRC was to fund the network itself, but once it's running, you don't need as much from an administrative point of view. As long as you have the network already running, you can have a coordinator 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week, whatever, that's just running the partnerships and the researchers. So the point is so that each hub, either sectoral or regional, develop close partnerships with their local partners to be able to be funded afterwards. So that is our hope for the future. 'Cause I don't know if there's any thought of, I don't think they're going to be necessarily applying for another SSHRC national grant, but who knows if maybe each regional hub can apply for more of a regional development one. But to my knowledge, that's not necessarily in the pipeline. Thanks for that. No problem. If ever there's no other questions, I have a question for you. As Brady was saying, we were wondering if ever this is a kind of thing that could be useful in the future to have regular events, not necessarily introductory events. We have this video now, we can share that. But would there be any discussion topics that you think would be interesting to have for students? As an example, the Quebec Hub in the past had hosted, when we were allowed meeting people in person, we hosted a more technical methodological webinar on how to do a proper lit review, for example. And that was hosted with Jean-Marc Fontan, the coordinator of the network. And he was just explaining different tips and different tools on how to do a lit review. So I don't know if you guys had any ideas of things that could be useful for the PhiLab students as either discussion topics or webinars or for future events, since we're not going to be introducing ourselves every time.
And if I could just add quickly in that point as well, if there's ever, and I don't know, I am sort of speaking on off the cuff here, but I think Catherine would be open as well if any student had a particular, research interest or, webinar idea for other students. If they, in their work, they were looking at, say, a particular methodology or organizational structure common to philanthropic organizations or somewhat related to PhiLab anyways, that maybe, they could even pitch that, to you or to their coordinator, who could then follow up and even do sort of a directed webinar maybe on their work, or getting students involved with students that way as well.
Yeah, just to follow up, so that's basically the Quebec Hub. Since they've been running for many more years, they have a lot more students. They actually, if you guys are interested, on the 26th of November, if I'm not mistaken, I'll double check, are hosting their official student day, which is when students get an opportunity to present their research, not from their PhiLab research, their actual master's or PhD research projects, as kind of like a way of practicing. So you can practice this like a presentation, and also you get comments and questions from other students. So it's kind of like a peer-to-peer presentation of your research. So if ever that is something that the hub as a whole would be interested in hosting, we can get 2-3 speakers every, let's say, 3-4 months. We do it 3 times a year. We get 3 people who present their research projects and then can follow up. That could be something that can be an option. So just let us know if ever you guys have any ideas. I'll be here till 3. I know, Brady, you said you had another meeting at 2:30, so just let me know if ever you have to go. I can stay if ever anyone has any questions or.
Yeah, I'm actually good. Actually, that was pushed away, so I should be able to go till. Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone had any ideas of future. These could be just ideas, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean we're doing them, but just if you have any ideas of what we could maybe do at next get-togethers.
I wouldn't mind a reading group of some kind. I don't know if there's interest in that from others, but.
In what sense?
Like maybe once a month we get together and read an article on the same topic or something like that, and then talk about it.
Mm-hmm. That could actually be, just speaking out of it, but like, let's say if we know like the theme in advance, let's say for the next month, so we have a whole month on climate change, for example, if you guys, we can determine one article on this subject, all the students read it, and then you can comment, we can create like a sort of like review where all the students write one paragraph of their thoughts, and then we can add that as content. That could definitely be something that could be very interesting.
Yeah, I love that.
Any other ideas?
I think just sort of like generally, sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt anybody who actually raised their hand, because I didn't. Generally having some kind of space, meeting or something like that, because I don't know what everybody else's experiences have been since the pandemic, but for me, like my university is really just like scrambling to get its shit together to figure out the teaching situation and like delivery of programming online. And so there hasn't, whereas like normally if you're on campus, there's a little bit more space for just like knocking on someone's door and saying hi or going to grab a beer. And especially now because I'm away from I'm not in the same continent as most of my peers. I'm not getting that social space. So it might be kind of nice to, I don't know, just like generally have a thing sometimes, whether it's structured, like whether someone's presenting on their research or there's like a methodologies webinar, or we just all have a beer in our hand and sit in front of a camera and say hi, whatever. I think it would be nice. So all I'm saying is I'm for things if you guys plan it, because I don't really have I feel like I don't have a cohort right now. It feels a bit isolating. So
yeah. Have you I don't know if you've heard of sort of like, I don't know, there's a bunch of different names for them, but like almost like co-writing, simultaneous working groups kind of thing, where you just sort of like log in from like, I don't know, 6 to 8 someday, and then you're on a Zoom call like this, but you're sort of working on your own thing, but you're on the Zoom call and you can like chat or ask a question here or there if you and just sort of like work away. But I think there's sort of what they say is like, and I've done it before and I thought it was very helpful, because I find like when I'm studying with like peers or with colleagues, people, then I'm a bit more like accountable. Like I'll be like actually working, versus if I'm by myself, I'm like on my phone or I'm looking at Facebook or I'm doing, like I find that if there's sort of that level of accountability of other people are also working, so I'm going to work, then that's something we could do. And I've also led similar workshops, sort of an exercise and focus. I'm not sure if you know the Pomodoro technique, but essentially, short bursts of work where we do like a 20-minute with a timer. We work for 20 minutes. You do a certain task that you can finish in 20 minutes, and then you take like a 5-10 minute break. We could like share some like funny videos or do some, something, and then you do that sort of for a few hours as well. So things like that, even informal things like that, where we just sort of have a link posted that students can drop in if they have an hour or two, if they want to work on something for whatever time. And whether it's PhiLab related stuff or not, that could also be an option, I think, as well. I definitely know what you mean when you say like you don't feel like you have a cohort. Like I'm on the same continent, but Newfoundland to Ontario is pretty far. So I definitely feel that as well.
By funny videos, you mean watching the American elections, right?
Absolutely. Only that.
That's only for November now.
It could be the theme.
Of course. Yeah, well, I don't have anything special to add really, but I like the idea about a reading group. The writing group thing is also, and even a social thing as well. And I think that, I also would find it useful if there would be a webinar or maybe a presentation on certain research methods, especially quantitative ones. And and even sort of sharing our own research and getting some feedback on it. I don't know, I took a part in the ISTR conference earlier this year, and they had like a research, like a PhD forum or something like that, where they had like two scholars from the that are part of ISTR, and just like some 6 or 7 PhD students. So each got an opportunity to present, their research, what they're working on, and then they received feedback from the scholars, but also from their peers. And then they had some follow-up, I don't know, like a couple of months later, just how far did you progress? What did you do with the feedback you received? So I think that there is always an opportunity if people are interested to sort of think about ways to make this, I don't know, like a place for collaboration and support, and yeah, why not?
For sure.
I don't know if Andrea or Al, if you guys had anything to add.
I did. I actually had my hand up. I'm so used to taking courses online, and I know there's a certain protocol that we have to follow.
Oh, I didn't see.
But what I wanted to know, I guess, is when I joined, we were in the middle of a pandemic. As far as networking is concerned, and just collaborating, what was it like prior to all of this? Like, especially with all the different hubs, how would we get everybody together? What used to be the norm, I guess?
So we didn't, because it was all very new. Like I would say before the I feel like we've gotten more people together since the pandemic, surprisingly enough. But the only experience I would say that had much more get-togethers live was the Quebec hub, because they had been already established for about 4 years. So they had time to build those connections and have events. But of course, the one that brought together the most people was we had I keep on saying shoulder by the lake because it's a joke, because in French we still call it our lac à l'épaule, which literally translated as shoulder of the lake or something. And it's actually the name of a lake. And so my supervisor, Jean-Marc, called it shoulder by the lake. I'm like, no, that's not the translation. It's just a get together. So we basically just got together to kind of go over the plan for the next year of PhiLab, and we had the directors, the supervisors of each hub that came in person. But because of the distance, and we have to think ecologically as well, the ecological footprint of flying people in, we haven't had many like in-person meetings other than the regional one. So in Quebec, the Quebec students, we used to host every 2 or 3 months, where they would host these Mon projet en 20 minutes, which is like my project in 20 minutes, where they would have 2 students present their research projects in 20 minutes at the presentation, and they would film it. So we can also post it online, but then the people that were present would give comments and ask questions. So we can I think that can definitely be done online. And I think it would actually, more people would probably come because it's easy to log in, and just by being online we can record it, and it's great for the student to learn, because like I'm doing a yoga training. This is nothing to do with academia, but I film myself doing yoga and then I watch and I'm like, oh, wow, I thought I was much straighter than that. And by watching yourself, you can really learn and like do an auto critique by also having other people there to give advice and reviews. Because my expertise is really in communications and in presenting. And I love doing presentations and I love helping people get better at presentations and how to present your information in a way. And because I'm not an academic, I can really give a different perspective. And this is something that I would love to develop with you guys and with PhiLab in general, and eventually even probably as a consultant. So all of these ideas are coming together, and we can have it like on a rotation of like 1 month we just get together to, you know, have a beer. Then the next month we can have like a reading group, so that gives people 2 months to read an article. And then the third month we can have like a presentation, so that we can have kind of like this like 3-month rotation. And, you know, you don't have to show up to every one, but that just so that it's regular. Because if it's every month and people know, it's a lot easier to maintain. And if it's different subjects and we can just have a calendar, I feel like that could be something that could be interesting. Or maybe every 2 months if every month is too much. But I mean, we're all stuck at home anyway. We might as well just get together on Zoom, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea of monthly, and I think that having it sort of switched up and having it on a consistent basis would be, you know, it wasn't. I mean, truly, that like even organizing an event like this wasn't super difficult. It was just having a place to register, get the link, blah blah blah. You know, and so having something like consistent basis that you just click the link, log in, you know, and then people could just do this. I just get together and chat, and you know that I think would help really would build that. And I agree with Kristen. I saw your comment there about doing a if answer next year's in person, maybe doing some sort of PhiLab student social, or if there's any conference that PhiLab is a part of, maybe we could, and it's in person and it's safe to travel, all that stuff. We can look at that. And I think Al, maybe you have your hand up again. I don't know unless that's an old hand up.
That was the one prior to this.
Now I see it after you speak. I see the hand.
I feel like that's like a good comparison to life, you know?
Yeah.
We only see it after the fact.
Yeah.
But just to come up with when's going to be the next meeting. So PhiLabs, this year was supposed to be based on the regional hubs. So regional hubs were supposed to have mini meetings where people can present their research projects happening. Obviously, those have all been shifted to online. Next year, so 2021 / probably at the end of the year, hopefully we'll be able to see people in person by then. But anyways, that was going to be our national network. So that was going to be just our Canadian based, trying to get people together to present the research, what's been done so far. And then the last one is the international one, which is going to be in 2023. So really at the end of the project, where we're going to be inviting, yes, all of our members, all of our researchers, as well as international members to come. So there's definitely going to be opportunities if we want to do a little side student one. I would say the national one might be an opportunity, or if there's nothing in 2022 planned, that could be an option as well.
So maybe
we could probably get some funding for that.
So maybe for like, just for argument's sake of us talking now, maybe we could do even like almost like a Christmas social or some sort of just a casual event in December next month with students, you know, maybe the first or second week of December, where we just do, I don't know.
The fun one.
Yeah, any sort of just gathering and chat and talk about how we're doing. And I don't know. Well, you know, I like the idea of having a monthly thing because it just makes it more regular and brings people together, I think, for sure.
I definitely think that if we have that, it's also like for new students, they don't have to wait like super long. Like if every month we're like, okay, just pop in if you have any questions and we can share it. And just, if it's a regular thing also, like on the website, it's going to be there. People know, the email template's there. It's going to be super easy to just send out. And let's say if the next one, we just have like a meet and greet, you know, drink some eggnog or whatever, and eat some cookies.
We could even do like I don't know, like games, like have like trivia or something that like we just have a Christmas social. You know what I mean?
We can do bingo. We can do like a Christmas PhiLab bingo. It could be PhiLab instead of bingo.
I love bingo.
Oh wait, that's 5 letters. Oh, that sucks. We'll do a 6-letter bingo. Okay. But yeah, we can definitely organize something like that. And then we can also, like, with the coordinators, maybe just establish, like, we know what the themes are, so we can see, let's say with the dates, when we would want to do, like, let's say the review thing, and we can establish an article together that can be like the first one, and we'll just do a test and let's just see how it goes. And now that we have the emailing list with everyone's email, it's a lot easier to just send out to everyone. You can do a poll, or, or send in your contributions for ideas. You can,
yeah,
all very good ideas.
I actually had one more maybe idea. I don't know if it would work or if it's okay to, I don't know if you, it's something that they do at Carleton, but I thought maybe we could try to incorporate. It's called a 3-minute. It's called 3-minute thesis. So something where you only have like a very short amount of time in order to like communicate and express like what you're doing. So I thought that's like a fun way to add, like, because then you really have to think about what you're doing and say it as.
And that's even like that's the 3-minute thesis is like an international.
Yeah. I think
so
they
like,
do it. Yeah.
If people wanted to, like, if someone was like, hey, I want to do this competition, like, we can definitely support everyone and have a watch event where people come in and do their 3-minute thesis and practice it. Like we could do some sort of support if that's. I don't know if I'll ever do that, maybe, but if someone's really keen and wants to do the 3-minute thesis, we can always be supportive and do that as well, for sure.
I definitely think, like, especially people that are in like the beginning of their thought process of just presenting, like, maybe not 3 minutes, but let's say 5 minutes, and then people can be like, I really don't understand anything of what you just said, then it means like, okay, I need to rework on that. It's just like, it gives like an unofficial like platform where people can, sometimes it's a lot of academics, I've realized it's very clear in their heads and like they know, but then as soon as they express it, I'm like, yeah, unless you're in that field, you have no idea what they're talking about. So I definitely think that it's a great way to practice, and that can be like the exercise instead of doing like big presentations that are lengthy and long, and you can do like a 5-minute thing so that people really, you get to the core of it, because it's like academic articles, you spend way too much time talking about stuff that aren't very important to the reader. Yeah, I think that could be actually a great exercise for a lot of people. Any final questions? Or Bridget, I don't know if you have any last minute, like maybe chime in of like any things that you would like to see, or if you have any questions on like if you'd like to become a PhiLab student.
And if there's anything that anyone, like, you have my email, you have Catherine's email, so send along any thoughts about if something pops in your head afterward, or you'd like to just send it after, then that's totally cool also.
I'm just going to send out my email. I'm not sure if I wrote Dunald. Oops. If ever anyone has any questions. All right.
Cool.
So I guess we'll work on setting a date for the holidays.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here now.
Yeah.
And